Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and I am sunburned, as you can tell by how my face looks. I got way too much sun yesterday, Memorial Day weekend. Lots of fun at the pool, but I am the color of a B-Wing pilot. So let's go ahead and take a look at some recent sales for vintage Kenner Star Wars figures, all loose graded AFA and UKG. I don't think I have any CAS graded figures in this batch, but a number of these fell underneath the radar. So I wanted to talk more about a few of the sales from this seller, Sears Cantina. He had a lot of old case AFA graded examples, and I sent these to my Patreon supporters kind of in an auction alert, letting them know about it. And I said, hey, if you can get these cheap enough, these are really good candidates to send into AFA for recasing for the brand new case styles, and if you get it cheap enough. And this is a good example of one where the final sales price really supports that. This was a Hollow Cheeks Tusken Raider graded AFA 85, but as you can tell, this is the original old style case that didn't even have the dowels around the neck. You send it into AFA, hopefully the grade stays the same. And gosh, we've documented a few examples with the new case style that have sold for big money, $800 plus. This one sold for $425. You send it in to get recased. I can't remember what the case cost is, $35 plus shipping to and from AFA. And I think you've got some built-in equity. Okay. None of these are investments. All right. But I'm just saying that from a value perspective, there's definitely some money left on the table with some of these old case AFAs if the grade stays the same. That's a big if. But this one looks like every bit of an AFA 85, and I think that that's a good candidate for it. Here was one from the same seller that already had the new case style. This was an 85 plus orange snake Yoda. This one sold for $227.50. My buddy, a Patreon supporter, did pick this one up, and he was telling me the population report, and it's actually fairly rare to find Yodas with 85 pluses or 90s. And so this was, I think, a really good pickup at $227.50. Here was a brown snake Yoda, but this one is the harder to find gray head Yoda. This is the Cater Factory gray head Yoda. You can see the very obvious color difference between the hands and feet versus the head, which is more of a grayish green color. And this one was graded AFA 85, and this one sold for $274.99 in an auction. Again, old case style on that one. Here's another one that would be a great candidate to send in to get recased. Again, you're making a big assumption that the grade stays the same, but this one is the orange snake Yoda, but this is kind of like the brighter green color to the head and with the black Pac-Man eyes. And this one was an AFA 90. That one sold one bid for $500 plus $30 shipping. So interesting to see that one sell, and you can see a very obvious color difference to the head versus this one that had kind of a gray head to it. Next up was a dark green stitch Jawa old case style AFA 85. That one sold for $171.90. Very tough stitch variant to find. It's not as tough to find as like maybe the mixed stitch or the rust stitch or the gray stitch, but the dark green I kind of equate to like the purple stitch Jawa. Both of those are pretty tough to find, and you can see very clearly there around the hood that very bright green stitch. And it's a very different stitch color for the hood versus the wrists and even at the bottom there. So I would actually call this one a mixed stitch variant because it's got a dark green stitch just around the hood. So yeah, I'm not sure if you'd send that one in to get recased by AFA, whether they would relabel that as a mixed stitch, but it's very clearly got a different stitch color to the hood versus the wrists and at the very hemline of the robe. So I just thought that was a really good pickup at $171.90. Here was an AFA 80 plus black hair and belt Hong Kong Princess Leia new case style. That one sold for $244. Another very fair price. If I had been kind of on top of my searches, I might have bid on that one. I think I've got a brown hair and belt AFA 80. I don't think I have the black hair and belt, but I can't remember. My memory's terrible. Next up is U85 R5D4. And again, this would be another good candidate to send to get in to get recased. And whether it would hold the 85 or not, I'm not sure. It does have a little blemish there at the very top of the sticker, but it doesn't look like it's yellowed at all. And I think that would be a good candidate as well. That one sold for $265, which to me, that's probably pretty close to fair market value, whether it had the new case or the old case style. So if you compare like this one versus the Hollow Cheeks Tusken Raider, I feel like the Tusken Raider was an especially good buy relative to what this one sold for. All of these fell underneath the radar, but are all good candidates, I think, also to get recased. This was an AFA 85 blonde-haired Luke Bespin. That one sold for 82 pounds, which is $104 US. And you think about what an AFA 85 new case style Luke Bespin goes for. And again, I'm making broad assumptions here. There's no guarantee that some of these really old case styles where they don't even have the dowels around the neck, the figure can rattle around inside the case and can take damage over time. And so, there's no guarantee that those grades stay the same. And that's probably why this one sold for what it did. It also does have what appears to be a very loose joint. So that could affect the grading, if you send it in to get recased. This was a U85 Flesh Face Taiwan Luke Jedi. That one sold for 80 pounds, which is $101 US. Another really good candidate, I think, to send back in to get a new case style. And then here was a Paleface Taiwan Luke Jedi AFA 85. That one sold for $115 in a buy it now situation, which I thought was a particularly good deal as well. Here was a Barada. This one did have the new case style. That one sold for $290 in a buy it now situation. So that's maybe a little higher. I think that, it did have an archival case, which I think does add some value to it. But I think in a auction, it probably would go $225 to $240 would be my guess on that one. That seems to be the consistent sales price for AFA 85 Baradas, but maybe someone was willing to pay up a little bit because it did have the archival case. I don't know. Next up was an older case style, but this was an AFA 90 Amanaman, and it sold for big money, $520. And as you can see, this is not the Generation 1 case. This one is kind of the Generation 2 case with the dowels around the neck, so it keeps the Amanaman in place and keeps it from rattling, in theory. I do have some with the dowels where they've kind of popped out of the dowel. Some Gamorrean guards are known to do that because they're very heavy figures, so they can pop out of the dowels, and I've got a couple of examples like that. But anyway, that AFA 90 did sell for $520 in an auction, 3 bids on that one. And you compare that versus the UKG 85 that sold, and this one also sold at auction. It sold for 220 pounds, which is $280 US. So it's a pretty striking difference to go from a UKG 85%, which was $280 versus an AFA 90, admittedly a higher grade and a different grading company, but you're paying, roughly about 2 times the price for it. So pretty crazy. Next up was a UKG 90% Trash Monster, the Dianoga Trash Monster. That one sold for 138 pounds, which is about $175 US. Probably about right. An AFA 85 goes for about that price, and 85 plus. That's about what the usual going rate is for an AFA example. So I think that's pretty fair for UKG 90. Next up, I've got 2 different examples of the Luke Stormtrooper. One of them UKG 85% that sold at auction, and another one that was a UKG 90% that sold in a make an offer situation. The UKG 85% sold for 560 pounds, which is $713 US. And Luke Stormtroopers got really high earlier this year. They've come back down to earth maybe a little bit. But that was a beautiful example, brand new case style. And Hammy 23 Ian was the seller. That's a trusted seller. He watches the channel. He and I have communicated a number of times. So if you see any more listings from Hammy 23 Ian over in the UK, he's a trusted seller, and you are guaranteed to get your item. And it's not like one of those sellers that you got to worry about packing correctly. He is a collector. He's also a seller, and he does have beautiful gems available. Next up, here was that UKG 90% gold level, and you can definitely see the difference in the color to the Luke Stormtrooper. This one was pretty much case fresh, and it's very slight, but you can see the very slight color difference between the arms and the torso on this UKG 85% versus this one where I feel like it's basically the same. I mean, it might just be lighting, I don't know, but To me, this looks like a UKG 90%. This was a beautiful example. And it was listed for 1,100 pounds, which is 1,400 US dollars, best offer accepted. And unfortunately, I could not find what the final sales price was on that one. But it did sell. I'm guessing, 1,000 pounds, maybe 900, somewhere in that ballpark. But that was a beauty. UKG 90% gold level Luke Stormtrooper with the new K-style. And that one did sell. Next up was a UKG 85% from Hammy 23 Ian. This one sold for 213 pounds, which is 271 US dollars. A very fair deal. That's, honestly, that's about what they go for over here. Loose, complete, ungraded. So I thought that was a really fair deal on that one. He also had a UKG 85% EV99. Beautiful example there. That one sold for 246 pounds, which is 314 US dollars. Again, they go for $300 all day long, ungraded in near mint condition. So another very fair price. And you guys in the UK get some pretty good deals over there relative to what we got to pay over here. Next up, here was a UKG 90% Spanish PvP Imperial Commander. Very tough to find 90% for any UKG, for any Spanish PvP figure. I think I've only got one Spanish figure that's graded 90%, and that is a Spanish PvP IG-88. And I paid a boatload for it. So you can, I don't really care who the grading company is. If it gets a 90 from CAS, UKG, or AFA, which I've never seen a Spanish figure graded 90 from AFA, but they are very tough to get that high of a grade because the Spanish factory was known to have sloppy paint apps, poor welding, just overspray issues, all kinds of issues like that. So to get a Spanish PvP Imperial Commander graded 90%, that one did sell for 240 pounds, which is 305 US dollars. Probably a price I'd pay very comfortably. It was just bad timing for me. This is one I still need. I've got the Lily Letty for the Imperial Commander, but I do not have the Spanish PvP figure. So it's unfortunate timing for me because I really would have liked to get this one, but it just was not meant to be. Finally, we had an AFA 85 Han Solo in Carbonite. Again, old case style. That one sold over in the UK for 150 pounds, which is 191 US dollars. Han Carbonite, to me, seems like it's coming down in price, no matter whether it's new case, old case, AFA, or UKG. It just seems like that's one of those figures that it's kind of coming back down in price lately. So bid accordingly if you're still looking for one out there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at recent loose graded sales. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.